You can make more money in 2026 and still feel poorer. Not I can't buy stuff poor. I mean the kind of poor where your chest is tight on a random Tuesday because your life has a monthly appetite and it doesn't care how you're doing. I watched my neighbor get a promotion and immediately do the whole new life rollout. New place, new furniture, new dinners that show up in little black containers. The kind of month where your Instagram looks like you finally beat the game. And from the outside, it worked. Everyone in the building was like, oh wow, he's doing really well. But then I ran into him in the hallway a few weeks later, and he didn't look rich. He looked tight, like his shoulders were permanently up near his ears, like he was walking around with the volume turned up in his head. And when we made small talk, he kept casually mentioning work the way people mention weather during a hurricane. That's the part nobody says out loud. A lot of people who look rich in 2026 don't feel rich at all. Because rich has been rebranded into a costume, and the costume has a monthly payment. So here's the reframe that messed with my brain. In 2026, feeling rich has almost nothing to do with how much you make. It's a math condition. It's the percentage of your life that's already paid for. Not in some motivational way, in the literal, boring, unavoidable way. How much of your next month is already handled before you wake up and start proving you deserve to exist? That's the first piece. And I'm not going to make you wait until the end for the math. Here it is, clean. Take your cash and safe reserves. Divide by your monthly fixed costs. That's your number. That's your owned time. If you have $12,000 set aside and your fixed costs are $4,000 a month, you own 3 months of your life. If you have $2,000 saved and your fixed costs are $3,500, you don't own time. You're renting oxygen. That one ratio explains why some people with a smaller income look calm, and some people with a big income look haunted. Because the old way of seeing money is, if my income goes up, my life gets easier. And that used to be true, back when the price of a normal life didn't sprint ahead of wages like it's late for a flight. Now what happens is your income goes up and your lifestyle gets heavier. Not better, heavier. I call this lifestyle gravity. Every upgrade adds weight to your monthly life, and after a while you stop owning your lifestyle. Your lifestyle owns you. You don't feel rich, you feel rented. And this is where it gets personal. And then there's the part that's even sneakier, because it doesn't show up as bad spending. It shows up as comfort, convenience, not wanting to deal with friction. That's what I call the comfort tithe, the quiet little donation you make every month to keep life smooth, fast, and impressive. It's not one big stupid purchase. It's the little just this once stuff that quietly becomes the baseline. And when your baseline is expensive, you can have a good income and still live with that constant low-grade panic humming in the background. So, I'm going to answer one question with zero moralizing and zero fantasy. Who can actually feel rich in 2026? Not who can look rich, not who can finance rich. Who can wake up on a random Tuesday, get bad news, and still feel fine? Been here. No motivation, just math. And by the end, you'll be able to spot fast whether someone is genuinely rich in 2026, even if they make less than you. I used to think feeling rich was just a nicer way to say making a lot. Then I started noticing a pattern in real life. The people who look rich in 2026, new car smell, upgraded apartment, little weekend getaways, the whole I'm doing great aesthetic, are often the most jumpy. Like they're one annoying email away from spiraling. They don't feel rich, they feel managed. Like their entire life is a machine that needs to be fed every month. And the people who actually seem calm, quiet, like nothing can really knock them off their axis, half the time they don't even make the most money in the room. That's the context nobody wants to say out loud. In 2026, you can have a strong income and still feel broke, because broke isn't a number anymore. It's a state. It's the feeling of being required to perform, required to keep the pace, required to say yes, because everything is a subscription now. Not just Netflix, not just your phone. Your entire lifestyle becomes a subscription. Your commute, your convenience, your treat-yourself habits, your social life, your housing choice. It all turns into a monthly obligation you don't remember signing up for. And this is why the old definition of rich is basically useless now. The old definition was, More income equals more freedom. The new definition is more
I'm not
income
saying
often
people
just
are
buys you a
dumb.
fancier
I'm
set of
saying the
handcuffs.
default path is designed to convert raises into recurring payments as fast as possible. Because who profits when your baseline keeps inflating? Financing companies, subscription businesses, delivery apps, the upgrade culture that sells you a personality in monthly installments, and content that makes you feel behind unless you keep buying your way back into normal. The moment you upgrade your baseline, your brain rewrites what normal is, and then normal starts costing more than you expected. Not once, every month. So when someone says, I make good money, why do I still feel behind? The answer is usually not because you're bad with money. It's because your life got heavier. Lifestyle gravity. That's the disease. And the cure is not shame, it's measurement. Because if your lifestyle requires an extra few hundred every month just to feel caught up, that's not a treat. That's a permanent bill. That's your future getting quietly skimmed so your present can look smoother. You're not broken. The math is broken. So when we talk about who can actually feel rich in 2026, we're not talking about the biggest paycheck. We're talking about who has the most slack, who can take a hit and still feel fine, who can get bad news and not immediately start negotiating with fear. That's the frame. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Section 3. Insight number 1. Owned time is the new rich. I want you to think about rich like it's a sound, not a look, a sound. Because in 2026, the people who feel rich aren't the ones with the loudest lifestyle. They're the ones with the quietest calendar, the quietest inbox, the quietest obligations. And that's a complete reframing, right? The old way of seeing it is, rich is a high income, a nicer neighborhood, better upgrades, the visible stuff, the stuff other people can point at. But the new way is darker and way more honest. Rich is the percentage of your life that's already paid for, not if you
paid
stopped
for
producing
like you
for a
own
while,
yacht.
your life doesn't immediately start punishing you. That's the math condition. Because the real divider in 2026 is not who earns the most. It's who has owned time. Owned time is when your life is not rented from next month. It's when you can hear bad news and your first thought isn't, okay, who do I call? What do I sell? What do I cancel? How do I explain this? It's just, all right, annoying, but fine. Here's a quick gut check. If missing one paycheck would make you instantly start canceling things, borrowing, or panicking, you don't have owned time. You have a salary. And your salary is holding your nervous system hostage. Brutal, but fair. And the reason most people don't get there isn't because they're dumb, it's because of lifestyle gravity. Every upgrade adds weight. Not just cost, weight. A nicer place doesn't just cost more, it comes with a new minimum acceptable life. Now you can't go backward without feeling like you failed. Now you're maintaining an identity, not a budget. And then you add the comfort tithe. That's all the little, I deserve this, decisions that turn into a permanent monthly donation to convenience. Delivery, financing, premium versions of normal things. Stuff that feels small in the moment and heavy when it stacks. It feels like relief, until you realize that relief is recurring. It's not a one-time treat. It's a subscription to not being annoyed. And when you add enough subscriptions to not being annoyed, you lose the ability to be human. You can't be tired. You can't get sick. You can't have a weird month. You can't have a boss who's a nightmare. Because, your life requires constant output just to stay normal. So when I say, who can actually feel rich in 2026, I'm talking about the person whose life doesn't demand their full attention just to keep the lights on. Not the biggest paycheck.
With two people.
The biggest breathing.
Person A makes $120,000 a year. Looks great. Nice apartment, car payment, subscriptions everywhere. They've got maybe $1,500 in cash that isn't already spoken for. Their fixed costs are high, and their comfort spending is basically their coping mechanism. Their owned time ratio? It's basically a couple weeks. One surprise bill, and the whole vibe changes. Person B makes $70,000 a year, way less flashy, but they keep fixed costs boring and the comfort tithe under control. They've got $10,000 in reserves and monthly fixed costs around $2,500. That's 4 months of owned time. Guess who feels rich on a random Tuesday? And notice what I didn't say. I didn't say person B is morally superior. I said person B is safer. In 2026, safety is the flex. I know a couple who look insanely rich from the outside. Nice place, weekend trips, always down for the group dinner, always upgrading something. And if you met them for 5 minutes, you'd think, oh, they figured it out. But when you talk to them a little longer, you hear it. They don't talk like people who are safe. They talk like people who are performing. Because in 2026, there's a weird split happening. Looking rich is a social skill, but feeling rich is a math condition. And the math condition is simple. How much of your life is already paid for without you showing up to earn it again this month? That's the real tell. Not their watch, not their car, not their busy, their owned time. Now, a lot of people hear this and go, okay, so I just need a bigger emergency fund. Not exactly. Because some people build a decent buffer and still feel trapped. Which brings us to the next layer. The people who actually feel rich in 2026 aren't the ones with the biggest incomes. They're the ones with the smallest required output. The economy got more subscription-y, more fee-y, more recurring. And a lot of people accidentally built a life where their baseline existence is basically a monthly invoice. Lifestyle gravity again. Not because you're irresponsible, because upgrades have mass. A nicer apartment has mass. A newer car has mass. A more convenient life has mass. And once it has mass, it has pull. It pulls your time. It pulls your attention. It pulls your decisions. Suddenly, you can't pick the job you want. You pick the job that keeps the machine fed. And the machine doesn't care if you're tired. Now, here's the reframe that messes with people. Feeling rich is not, I can buy things. Feeling rich is, I can absorb life. Like when your boss turns weird, or your kid gets sick, or your car does that noise, or you have one of those months where you're just not at your best. If your entire life is calibrated to require perfect performance, you will never feel rich. You will feel hunted. And you can see who's actually rich by watching what they can say no to. Can you say no to the social weekend that costs a few hundred by the time it's over? Not because you're cheap, because, you don't feel like buying approval. Can you say no to the job that pays more but owns your nervous system? Can you say no to the upgrade that turns into another forever payment? That's the separator. Not the size of your life, the looseness of it. In 2026, the people who feel rich have this quiet superpower. Their calendar isn't held hostage by their bills. And once you have that, you stop chasing more. You start protecting enough. I watched someone at my gym get the big win. New role, bigger title, better everything. And what shocked me wasn't the upgrade. It was what happened to their face. They didn't look proud. Into a performance with a payroll department behind it. Because in 2026, there's an ingredient to feeling rich that people keep missing. And it's not income. It's not investing. It's not even debt. It's how much of your life is already spoken for. I used to call it the obligation ratio, but you don't need another label. You already know what it is. It's the percentage of your month that's non-negotiable. Bills, payments, commitments, the stuff that doesn't care if you're having a hard week. And you can spot it instantly. The people who look rich are often the ones with the highest spoken-for life. Their money is real, but it's already assigned. It has a job. It has a boss. So they're not wealthy. They're busy. Here's what the old frame says. If you make more, you'll relax. The new frame is darker, but it's true. If your obligations expand faster than your freedom, you'll never relax. Because, every upgrade quietly adds a supervisor to your life. A nicer place doesn't just cost more, it comes with a higher baseline of normal. A nicer car doesn't just get you places, it locks you into a version of yourself that can't ever have a slow month. A busier social life doesn't just feel fun, it becomes a weekly bill you pay in cash, time, and nervous system. And the wild part is, you don't even notice it happening, because each obligation is small by itself. It's just a little more here, a little more there, a little more convenience, a little more speed, a little more image. Then one day you wake up and you realize your paycheck isn't buying you a better life. It's buying you permission to keep your current life from collapsing. That's the shift.
Feeling rich in 2026 means your life has
Slack
slack,
is what
not
lets you
luxury.
say,
I'm not
Slack.
taking that meeting. Slack is what lets you walk away from a client who starts treating you weird. Slack is what lets you handle a surprise expense without it turning into a 3-month emotional event. And when you don't have Slack, you can't feel rich because your money isn't giving you options. It's just keeping the machine running. So here's the question that decides who can actually feel rich next year. Are you earning money or are you feeding obligations? Because one of those feels like power and the other feels like a nicer cage with better lighting. So if rich in 2026 is own time, cool. How do you actually build that without moving into a cabin and eating lentils out of a pot? Here's the practical system I use. It's not a budget, it's not a hustle plan. It's a filter that turns your life back into something you can breathe inside. I call it the quiet coverage, because the goal isn't to look rich. The goal is to have your life covered, quietly, predictably, without needing a perfect month to survive. Step 1. Separate your life into base life and performance life. Base life is the version of your month that keeps you safe. Housing, normal food, transportation that works, boring bills, minimum debt, health stuff. Performance life is everything that requires you to keep winning. The upgraded car, the we deserve it weekends, the subscriptions that started as convenience and turned into identity, the little luxuries that feel small until they stack. In 2026, feeling rich comes from shrinking performance life until it's optional again. Not because you're a monk, because the economy is noisy, and your nervous system can't build anything real when it's
If you
constantly
lost your
bracing
job
for
tomorrow,
impact. Which parts of your life would you be embarrassed to give up? That list is probably your performance life. And that list is probably why you feel pressure even on good months. Step 2. Put every new expense through one question. Not, can I afford the payment? This. Does this create a new monthly promise? Because monthly promises are what steal the feeling of richness. They don't just take money, they take flexibility. They turn your calendar into a hostage note. And the cruel part is, the promise doesn't have to be huge to change your whole life. A couple new monthly commitments is enough to turn I'm fine into I can't risk anything. That's not about math. That's about your brain realizing you no longer have exits. Step 3. Build a walk-away buffer before you upgrade anything. This is the part people hate because it's not sexy. You don't buy the new thing first and then figure it out. You build the buffer first, and then you decide if you even want the new thing when you're not stressed. Because upgrades feel amazing when you're tired, but when you're stable, you start noticing something weird. A lot of what you wanted was just relief, and paying for relief with future obligations is how people end up with a life that looks successful and feels like a treadmill. So the system is simple. Shrink performance life, interrogate monthly promises, build the walkaway buffer first. Do that and you'll notice something shift. You'll stop asking, what can I buy? And start asking, what can I ignore? And that is the closest thing to
Thinking
feeling
about this
rich
guy
that
I saw at a coffee
2026 is
shop.
going to offer.
Nice watch, nice jacket, new car keys on the table like they were part of the outfit. And the whole time he's on the phone doing that fake calm voice people do when they're trying not to sound scared. Not angry, not sad, scared. Because the version of rich he bought comes with a monthly performance requirement. He doesn't own his life. He's renting it from next month. And that's the reframe I want you to leave with. In 2026, feeling rich has almost nothing to do with what you can afford on paper. It has everything to do with what your life demands from you every single month just to keep the lights on and keep the image intact. Lifestyle gravity. Not because it's dramatic, because it's physics. Every upgrade adds weight, not just money weight, mental weight, calendar weight, don't mess up weight. And the heavier your life gets, the less it takes to pull you into panic. Meanwhile, the people who actually feel rich, they look almost boring because their flex is silence. They can ignore the group trip. They can ignore the algorithm telling them they're behind. They can ignore the limited time offer that's basically just pressure with better lighting. They built enough quiet coverage that emergencies don't become identity crises. If you can cover even 3 months without begging your future self for mercy,
your entire nervous system changes. That's not a typo. So here's the binary choice. You can keep building a life that looks expensive and feels fragile. Or you can build a life that feels expensive because it's calm. Because nobody's coming. Not your employer, not the economy, not some magical year where everything gets cheaper and easier. If you want to feel rich in 2026, you build a life you can hold with one hand. The math doesn't lie. The people who feel rich aren't the ones with the biggest lives. They're the ones with the most owned time.